Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps. I'm sorry, chumps, champs too. Neanderthals, semi-fascists, maggots, weirdos, and of course those dog-faced pony soldiers.
All right. So like I was saying to Brian here, looks like one little click of the button on his end is all we needed to do. If I had only contacted StreamYard before fussing with my microphone on this stuff. So hopefully it sounds good to everybody else that is joining us along the way. All right, so there's news as usual. First off, I just want to say we've got a heat wave, maybe record temperatures here in the DMV. They're saying pretty much stay out of it if you're in a sensitive group, stay out of the weather between 1 to 7 and whatnot. And I'm not planning on going anywhere. I don't know about you.
I got basketball on the blacktop tonight at 6.
Oh,
so yeah, I'm looking out my window like
yeah, and the blacktop. I mean,
the rainstorm would be okay today. Just saying, but we'll be on the blacktop tonight.
That'll even at night it'll still be steamy. I think.
Yeah, 6 to 7:30. It'll be quite toasty out there.
Yeah.
Lots of breaks and Gatorade and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, take care of people. I've been watching this because obviously the heat is a major news story, particularly because the media is looking to point the finger at climate change. Right, every time we have this kind of heat, it's climate change. Not as much as when we get cold. Right, I mean it's more about the heat than the cold.
Right. They neglect that part because it doesn't fit.
Yeah, it's always that inconvenient thing that they try to do.
Anyway, then you have the few people who try to make everything fit into that bubble.
Right. There's a narrative they're going for, and this is the narrative, and everything. But I was watching because they had a couple of, and these were not heat related deaths, but we've had a couple of young kids, were killed on they died playing football here recently, high school football and maybe even a little bit younger. And there was a story, I don't know if it was NBC or whatever, but I'm watching it streaming. So I don't know how it comports to what is going on regular broadcast television. But one of these schools they've got a person who's basically in charge of monitoring this situation, the client, kind of the heat and everything. And she's got some kind of little device she puts on a tripod or something like that. I mean, I don't know, it costs them like $500 or whatever. And they're just looking at this thing and they're trying to vary. And then they know when to make sure, if things get excessive, they make sure they call for breaks and make sure the kids are getting plenty of hydration and things like that and all of this. But yeah, so anyone out there, just make sure you stay safe here in terms of get hydrated, stay hydrated. Don't overhydrate. Yeah,
your muscle breaks down and so forth. Yeah, we're big on keep hydrated, keep the water flowing. We'll we have drills we do for 15 minutes, right? So tonight we'll do them 8 minutes and we'll have halftime. And then we'll go do the other 8 minutes, right? So you get another minute, but there's a break, 2-3 minute break in between. Get everybody back, cool down. A couple of things on this. One is, when we were in Texas, everyone we talked to was adamant. When we were there, it was pretty hot, and they were like, "This is the hottest it's been all year. It's been a really cool summer in Texas, in South." And we were like in the Houston area, in Austin. We weren't in the north. So it's not been a really hot summer, and it's not been. We haven't had much hurricane activity. What little there's been has been mostly well out to sea, and we didn't see it. And there's also this story that is going on about the water. There was going to be a La Nina, and they said, oh no, a massive El Nino. It's come and warmed all the waters, and the waters are at record warm temperatures. And now they are headed toward record low temperatures again, just in a 2-month period. And now they are saying we could be under a really icy pattern this winter here because of the water in the equatorial Pacific is rearranging itself again. So I'm interested to hear from the global warming doomers. Do you think this has to do with carbon? Do you think that this is the carbon got high, so the water started moving around like this? I'd just be interested to hear what they say to this, right? Because they're pretty good at coming up with an excuse to shoehorn whatever happens into their theory.
Yeah, this is a little bit different topic than that in a sense, but it kind of plays off on this a little bit. I was just reading an article the other day in the Wall Street Journal about, I think it's Kyle, Texas, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so they were talking about it's becoming like a boom town, and there's another town nearby called, I think, Buda or whatever, Buda, and but they're building like crazy, but there's a disconnect. I mean, this sounds a little bit like what's happening in Arizona. They're building a lot of homes, but they don't have the water supply, to really handle all the new homes. And so Kyle and I guess a couple other cities, I mean, they banded together and they spent $250 million on a pipeline to bring in water from elsewhere. And they've got things like you can only water your lawn every other week or every other day or something like that. But something I hadn't realized, and as they were in this article, was just that with all these new homes, particularly, homes have to need a chance to settle. That I knew. I just didn't realize how much, say, water and moisture played a part of the settling process, and how important it is to make sure you have enough of that around so everything settles right. And so this is actually becoming a little bit of an issue right now, at least. They said they're going to have plenty of water come 2025, though apparently some other districts or whatever, some other areas have got some dibs on the water too. So the water may not last the 30 years that the city is claiming, but they're struggling a little bit with a lack of water, not because lawns will turn brown, because if they do, they do. And I guess they can just keep replanting grass, but it may affect the settling and the foundations of the homes, which was the first time I'd really heard about that. And I don't know. I don't really know what happens. I mean, we need housing. This country continues to grow, albeit somewhat slowly, except for, say, immigration or illegal immigration. And so there's a lot of these places where they are booming. Arizona has places in the desert that are booming. Texas and places going booming. But without a natural water supply, and when they're piping it in, it's like, how long does that last? What are the economics of this long term? I mean, we don't really face this here, but they surely face it in the Southwest.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. You present a problem and there's enough money involved in solving it, it'll get solved, right? So I have confidence that it will. One of the things that we've made some pretty good gains in recent years is desalinating water, so we could use more. I'm sure I butchered the pronunciation of that word pretty darn good.
I hate that word.
We can make more use of ocean water, right? I think that's a big part of California's plan to get out of its water problems. Although California's water problems have largely dissipated in the last 4 or 5 years because the 400-year drought appears to be wrapping up over there.
Yeah, I mean, though they did have a little. I mean, some of that came back to a certain degree because it got so hot. Some of the water that had accumulated had dried up and everything like that. So you have a little.
That's right.
The other thing, I mean, and you talk about desalination, whatever, and the other thing that they were talking about too is taking taking all that brackish water, right, and whatever, right, and that's part of that process, right, is that trying to find a way to turn that into drinking water, something that's potable or whatever and usable. There's so many things that are going on nowadays that they're trying to do this, though. I don't know, frankly, if you told me that what you added something particularly to the water, I'm not sure I would take a swig of that yet, but it may be perfectly safe. I'm just not. I'm not sure I'm ready psychologically to handle that. But I don't know if you are, but I'm not. All right. So beyond the heat, so we've got a couple things going on in Israel. We've had Israel. I guess they kind of learned about a planned rocket attack by Hezbollah, and so they basically did a preemptive strike on Hezbollah. And then when Hezbollah did the firing, they were able to actually intercept and take care of a large percentage of the rockets that came down. So I think one person was killed and maybe another person injured or whatnot. So they sustained minimal damage while I think they did a fair amount of damage, to the operation in Gaza. But they also rescued another hostage. Now this is a slow process. This guy was in a tunnel. He'd been there for 326 days. I mean, that gives the family some hope that there's still a few alive, though I'm still betting that a majority of the 108 or so that Israel was looking for are not alive, as evidenced by what happened with the ones that they found, ones they brought back dead just recently. But this continues to go on, and yet, despite the fact that there are all these hostages out there, and we have talked about this before, time and time again, and we will continue talking about this until this thing is over and done with, whenever that will be, is that Hamas has they took hundreds of innocent Israeli citizens hostage. They have killed many of them. They talk about they want to find a solution, but they have pretty much rejected everything out there that has been put on the table that doesn't really call for just massive concessions by Israel, because they are not interested in the overall peace and the two-state solution type of thing. As you have said, they don't want Israel on the map, right?
They don't want Israel on the map. They're not interested in any of this. The war keeps the heat on. It keeps the West arguing about this. If the war stops, we're not having protests on campus. Democrats aren't promising the world that the Palestinians, right?
Right.
We don't care anymore, right? Let's go about being you. And so now what we have is, we do care. We talk about it all the time. It's not in the Palestinians' interest to stop this at all. And they're not close to in fact, they're even farther from their geopolitical objectives. So, they're not for peace. They're not going to they're not going to accept any peace deal. Why would they?
Right. And yet I think there was a demonstration at Cornell, that's already started. Something I think we both knew was going to happen. Any conservative probably knew was going to happen, is that the summer was a little bit of a lull with campus protests because it was the summer. I mean, schools are still in operation, but they're on a summer schedule with a handful of students. And now you have students are returning back to class, and so are these activists. I mean, a lot of them, they took courses and classes in activism while they were away for the summer, so they knew what to do to kind of basically increase their activism and some of the stuff that they were doing from the end of the last semester. And so they're already out there doing it. And Cornell, their president just resigned, so they have an acting president. Right? Columbia, yeah, that's right. Cornell has a new president. I don't know. Is that Cornell president? Isn't it an acting president?
Cornell has an acting president.
Yeah.
Columbia is the one that just quit.
Okay, so that's all this Ivy League stuff. Cornell, Columbia. Oh, you go to the Ivy League and it's just a bunch of protests.
Well, part of Cornell is not an Ivy League. There's essentially two Cornells, and one of them is basically an ag school, right? That's the one Keith Olbermann went to. He's in the ag part. He's not in the Ivy part. So you got to pin him down to make him admit that. But yeah, the Washington Post today, Dead Tree Washington Post, the unsigned editorial on the paper today is basically a long list of what colleges are doing to tamp this down or whatever. And I'm sure that the calls have come out from Democrat HQ to keep this on the down low because it will hurt Harris at the polls. I don't know how much these people take orders from Democrat HQ, but they've been told to keep it quiet. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think you're right. It won't be long before they're started again because, she's had to back up on a lot of stuff that she has been for in the past. And that's one of them. She's she's talking about ceasefires and things that leave Israel very much on the map and in play. And that's not what they want. So,
right. Yeah. So, this is, there are a lot of things for Harris that are problematic if she gets called on the carpet for it. And that's kind of the thing. If she gets called on the carpet for it, the media certainly is not going to call her out on these things. It is going
right.
to, it's going to rely
internal party problem. It's it's unrest within the Democrat Party. That's their biggest problem now, because the media is not going to harm them. The media is making excuses for her not sitting for an interview. Like, she didn't have to sit for an interview. Like, who says she has to interview? Like, what does she think about this? Well, we don't know. She won't sit for an interview.
All right. Since you brought that up, we'll go there before we go back to that stuff as we dance around. All right. So she is going to sit for an interview, but
right.
not without, as Scott Jennings says, I think it was Scott Jennings said it's her emotional support animal. It's weak sauce.
Or training walls.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is incredible. So she waits all this time. It was what? It was July. It was July 21 is when Biden stepped back. So, we've had well over a month. And so now she finally, there'd been a lot of calls about this from all quarters about doing an interview. So she agrees to do it, but she's got to bring Tim Walz along to protect her,
even though the friendliest possible interview has been arranged.
Yeah.
Pre-recorded with Dana Bash, who has, after last week has no credibility left as a journalist, just completely done.
Yeah. So I don't know how many people are going to tune into that. Probably plenty of people will do that. I don't know if it's going to change a lot of minds because it's such a setup at this point.
Well, no, I think they're, first of all, to back up, we're down to, she has about 94% of her base. Trump has about 94% of his base. He's ahead on independents, about 9 or 10% on independents. About 10% of the independents, who are 32% of the voters. 32% of the voters are independent. About 10% of those 32%. So about 3% of the voters are undecided. Right. So that's the possible audience that she has to persuade. Okay. So, is she competent in that interview? Does she offer anything besides, whiz bang, joy? I sure do like Tim and his dog. Or, can she say, we need some change and here's my position and how I'm going to pay for it. And this is why I think it'll work. Right. Give a credible, credible interview, credible, list of herself, what she wants and so forth. If she can't do that, then all those people, there's a lot riding on it. Those people she can't get, right? And it's already, he's 8 or 9% ahead of among independents. So she's got to pretty close to run the board among the remaining 10%, right? She's got to win 8, 9, 10% of them to prevail. So, she's really in kind of a tough situation.
I understand that part, but don't you think though? As soon as she gets into any kind of trouble, don't you think Walz will just step in there to fix it or try to fix it and smooth it over?
Or Bash, she's going to have a reporter cheering for her to make it. That is a partisan pro-Democrat reporter. Is not an objective journalist by any description anymore. This is a, one who is a, proven liar on behalf of the other side. So, she's going to have a lot of people helping her fix it. But if those people can see that she needs help fixing it a lot, then, they'll know what they need to know, right? How much did need to be fixed there, right? How much does she understand? And, they think that they have a big advantage in this debate. They do not have a big advantage in this debate, right? They'll be lucky to get a draw out of the debate because he'll be able to. And again, against Joe, the right strategy would have been to let Trump have his mic on and let Trump talk all night, right? So Joe didn't have to talk, right? Imagine if they'd have just left Trump's mic on, he could have been undermined like he did the first debate in 2020, right? He just keeps talking over Joe. Everybody's like, he's a rude jerk. I'm going to vote for the other guy, right? Right? That's what happened. So this time they're like, okay, you give your answers and you have to shut up because we're turned off your mic. And then they go to Joe and you can't think mortgage, And so like, okay, by not letting Trump interject anything, you left Joe out there on the island for 2-3 minutes at a time and he couldn't handle it. Now you're saying, she's not going to wander off like Joe, right? She's going to say her words out. And by the way, I got to do this on TV because I try to tell people this, and you can't tell. It doesn't make as much. But if you notice, when they ask her a question, if she doesn't know the answer, she'll go, and she starts talking with her hands like this. This is her thinking up a history is great. Great is history. Knowing history enables us to see the future. History is great, right? Or whatever her thing that she, the school buses or whatever. Okay, this is a fantastically silly person. I do trust him. I think it's becoming pretty obvious, and then it's going to get more obvious as time goes on. But, in this case, she will say things that don't make any sense. And Trump will have the opportunity to undermine her, right? Like she should have gone for the mic off, right? She gets to give her whole statement unchallenged. Trump gets his 30 seconds, and when Trump gets his 30 seconds, when they get to 20 seconds, Mr. Trump, your time's almost up. Mr. Trump, you're in your last 10 seconds of your time, Mr. Trump. Okay, well, there goes my 10 seconds while you were warning me, right? So, I mean, they will risk it every way. I mean, they will rig it for her every way they can. So, she should have kept the mic off, but they think that they know how to game Trump, so they're going to let her keep it, and he's going to be able to argue in real time every point she makes.
So I do think John's got a point there, though, in terms of that. Is that you're much more optimistic on how some of these things will go for the Republican side and how this will work out. I think the debate, with the rules that'll be in place, if there's the mics off, no audience, that kind of thing, if the same rules that we had under Biden apply, that's a favorable thing for Trump. Because once again, he doesn't speak over anybody. It's then she's stuck with her own words, even if Wall steps in. I kind of wonder, though. I mean, there are, there is a certain segment of the population that will buy into just about anything that they hear, right? And so maybe it's not the whole of the independents that are out there, but maybe it's a fraction of them that are out there that will just buy what she says if she sounds halfway good. I'm also kind of wondering, how much, if it's pre-recorded and everything like that, how much time they have from the time they record it to the time they air it to monkey with it, right?
Figure that for, yeah.
Yeah, so I would like to see the whole unedited version of this versus whatever they're going to air. This type of thing. I mean, this brings me back to decades ago with AIM, where when I learned about how things were done at 60 Minutes, and nothing, it wasn't technically nefarious. It was just the way that they did things, and every program was doing it. The way they edited the pieces were more nefarious, and what they put on television, the final product was nefarious. But what you film more than you're going to air. If you're going to pre-record, then they can interview her for an hour and a half, and then cut it down to an hour and make it look like it was just the hour, and 30 unfavorable minutes goes to the cutting room floor, or as such, basically.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So I remember there was a case where when nuclear power.
Go ahead. I'll tell you this.
No, go ahead.
So I keep saying this, and like people keep telling me I'm nuts about this. Like people like Tim Graham have been following this stuff for years, tell me I'm nuts about this. But I think that CNN is running out of patience with her. Right? CNN, they were in line to get the first interview, or they were trying to be in line to get the first. And I guess they've gotten it right. Okay. But I mean, they blew them off for weeks, right? And you had Jim Acosta on there. You have Berman, right? Doug Berman, or isn't that his name? Doug? John Berman. It's on their news, right? Saying, what was on Kamala's schedule today? Well, she's getting her message to the voters. She's working on her stances. Yeah, what's on her schedule though? What's she doing today? And he trapped her campaign manager and made her admit she didn't have anything on the schedule that day. He's like, so here she is with a free day. She can't do an interview. She can't talk to any of us, give us any answers on anything. Well, we're taking our message to the voters. So it's 3 or 4 things where CNN has, they're like, we expect our ring to get kissed too, right? We expect you to come on and be on our shows and hype our ratings and say your thing to us, right? And you're not doing it. You're refusing it. You don't trust us any more than you trust the other networks, right? And she can't trust them because it's, almost any question is likely to throw her into a bad light, right? She knows the answers to almost nothing. So, they have a big problem here. And so I think when they get in this interview, what they choose to air, right? You're right. There's going to be what they get in the interview, and then there's going to be what they choose to air. And what they choose to air is going to have to reflect some fairly critical stuff, right? I don't think that you can come out of that interview and call it the real, let her get the benefit of what she's trying to get out of it, unless there's some pretty bad stuff in there, right? If you put out a, how's your dog, interview, don't you just love Tim and his family? What did you think when the son was cheering for the dad? All those kind of questions. If that's what you do, then people are going to say, okay, you haven't done your interview, right? You did your softball nonsense. Like, we need answers to the actual questions, and, as someone pointed out on the X this morning, the first question of the debate of the interview should be, what's he doing here, right? Why do you need him? Why can't you just come talk to us?
Yeah. Governor Walz, why are you here?
Well, no, it's not, he's here because she told him to be there. Yeah. And we know why he's there, but it was like, why can't you just come face that yourself? And, so like Keith Olbermann, he was on, he said something about this, and Keith Olbermann comes on and says, first interview after you appoint the, after you appoint the vice president, is always with the vice president. You go together. Trump's first interview after he appointed Vance, he had Vance. Okay, all right, that's true. If you're not waiting a month, right? If you appoint him and you wait a month to agree to even one interview, then the bring your VP so we can all meet him thing is out the window. We've met him, right? We know what he is. So, and like, how much of this interview can we waste talking about his military record, right? He's not the candidate. Are you gonna just ignore that and say, oh well, we're talking to presidential people and he's not the presidential person. Okay, then what's he doing there, right? So they're kind of like they're caught in a trap here.
Yeah, and it'll be
God help him when he debates Vance, right? How does he get out of that? You're staring across at a guy who did go into combat, right? Who did serve, who didn't exaggerate anything, right? And you obviously exaggerated, you obviously lied, and he's obviously going to bring that up, and there's nothing Walz can do about it.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting debate when that takes
place. Sure will.
Well. Yeah, so we'll have to wait and see how these all shake out, I think, in the end. But yeah, I think whatever credibility CNN has probably rests on things like this. The corporate parent is just reeling. They took I think it was like a $8 or $9 billion write down of their assets, largely in part of their cable networks, which includes CNN, because people are still cord cutting like crazy, and they're not buying into as much streaming of the properties that that Warner Discovery has. And so these companies are
political TV is it's kind of going the way of political talk radio, right? It's kind of dying of its own way. You can just only watch this, psychodrama for so long, and for you to say, we're not getting anywhere here. And I think they're all down, right? Fox is down, MSNBC is really down. The CNN is down. It's not a. It's something that entertains a small microcosm of society now. It's like, you watch the arguments on the social media, you watch Fox. It's like, most of the time the person comes back and says, no, I don't, right? It's just obvious that this stuff is true. So, I don't think that the hold those people have had on the political discussion is what it was even 4 years ago. And I think that may be what they're about to find out.
Yeah. What my whole, when we were in the office, before we'd shut down the physical office, I had Fox running all the time. I didn't have it. I wasn't necessarily watching it, but it was basically playing in case I saw something interesting. But, then after I cut the cord at my home for cable, kind of forced us in different directions. So my wife winds up watching. She can kind of pick and choose. She's a big fan. She's become a big fan of Victor Davis Hanson, and he's frequently a guest on Megyn Kelly's show. So I'm watching. I still want to kind of get the news beyond the Wall Street Journal. So I'll actually scroll through whatever CBS, ABC, NBC streams, which is it's a little bit like headline news, CNN headline news. That every 30 minutes, it's basically refresh. Start at the top of the hour. If you watch 30 minutes of that, the next 30 minutes are going to basically be what was previously played, more or less. And so you just might as well not come back till the afternoon or another point in time or the evening until when their news gets more updated, rather than having them regurgitate the same stories. The Fox streaming program, they do a lot of just carrying a lot of, I don't know, necessarily some press conferences or just a lot of other, sometimes long interviews and different things. They're not really covering the news in the same fashion the other networks are on the streaming side of it. So that can be kind of interesting. But, cable news, watching that, I don't know. I kind of like, I've just grown more accustomed to picking and choosing what I want to watch. And I can go to YouTube and say, I want this person, this person, this person. But I also look for making sure that the people I'm watching have got credibility. I don't want to watch there's enough crazies out there on both sides that are all on YouTube. And so I'm pretty judicious about, who I would wind up watching in this case, but I'm slowly building a library in essence of I want to watch. I want to watch. This is a go-to. This is a go-to. And I will watch clips when Fox News publishes clips, on YouTube or something like that. Yeah.
I gotcha.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you're a sports fan, if you got to have college sports like that, you're probably gonna have to subscribe to like a YouTube TV or something or other, out there and pay the price to get access to it, right? But the great thing about when you do that, no matter if it's Fubo or YouTube TV or whatever, and none of those things are particularly cheap in my mind, anymore. Those prices they start off fairly cheap, but they've come way up. It's just that you can subscribe just for a few months and just cut it off, and you really don't have anybody on the other end, like cable companies. It's like, oh, don't you want to stay? We want to do this. They're retention specialists. They make it really hard to cut the cord. Or if you got a special deal, you may have to stay in the thing for a year, and you don't want a year and all of this. But the great thing about this is that we've kind of got a democratized system of, I just want it for 3 months. I'm going to subscribe 3 months, and then I'm going to cut it out, and then I will come back when I want to come back, and that's that. And I kind of like that process, if you want to do that. But yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I watch. I've seen a few, Fox News, YouTube clips that interest me, and better than watching the entire program. And in essence, I don't have to sit there and spend an hour. I can watch the better part, kind of almost the best of, without having to watch the entire thing. So, we're in a better place in a lot of ways. And cable news,
I think we're in transition.
Yeah, I think
yeah. I think we're someone's going to come along and organize your ability to select all this stuff, and make it where you pay us, and we'll give you we'll keep you straight with all the little networks you use, and whatever frequency you use, which is essentially what cable is right now, right? The infrastructure is a little different, but it's the same idea. So, I think that's part of it. I think that part of the way cable succeeded as it did is it organized some stuff in a way that consumers could access it and understand it. And I think when I hear people talk about what you're talking about, what they talk about almost invariably is the difficulty of having the thing you want when you want it, and finding the right channel and being able to turn it on and off at your will and so forth. I think that is, I've always thought that will be a big role for Bitcoin and that type of thing, to where you need, what we really need is, I was talking to my daughter about this yesterday, is a way to, you're scrolling through the internet, you want to read an article in the New York Times. How can I pay the New York Times 20 cents to read this article, right? How can we make that viable for me and the New York Times? Convenient enough for me to do it, and convenient enough to bill and process the payment for the New York Times to do it, right? And I think Bitcoin and stuff like that could be part of the answer of that, right? I think it's going to where, you're literally buying each thing you read, look at, and, you decide, nickels and pennies and dimes at a time what you want,
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the micro payments issue. And how do you do that without getting, buried alive by fees to accept those payments?
Right.
But at some point in time, someone's going to figure that out. Yeah, and maybe Bitcoin and the other currencies like that, maybe that is a way, where you wind up doing that. In essence, is things have become much more seamless, in essence, to do that. Because it's like, even if the New York Times says we'll give you a $50 a year subscription, and you just get a digital subscription. It's like, am I going to read $50 worth of news during the year? I don't know. I would almost
Right.
prefer the
It's a tough question. I mean, I
would,
think you would out of the New York
yeah,
Times. I think I would.
yeah.
You know?
But would the average person? But would I also like the a la carte type of thing where I could just buy the article and pay a smaller
Right.
amount? This article is worth $1, or maybe it's just like something where you just say, okay, you know, I'm willing to pay you $1 for this article. Will you accept? And the machine on the other says yes. Okay, here's my money. Take it. Go. You now have 5 days to read this article, and then it expires, and you're done. I mean, there's all kinds of things with now that we've got artificial intelligence and everything like that, where I think a lot of these things could come to fruition. When it came to cable TV, when they first came on the scene, 500 channels kind of promises and all this kind of stuff. It was a whole new world. It was something we hadn't seen before. It was like, wow, we can get all this content, and we only have to pay this amount of money. It's like, wow, that's pretty good. And it's evolved now where, thanks to the internet, you've got YouTube has basically, opened up the world to say, you want some of this content, we'll provide some free, we'll provide some for a fee. Um, and the free content, you have to live with some ads because that's how we pay for the content. But what has been shown, as even for the things like Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and whatever, is that their ad tiers that they put in there, they put a lower price ad tier in. Those are much more profitable for them than the ad free tiers that they charge more money for, because they can serve up more ads, and the people are locked in. You can't skip the darned ads there. So you've got to watch them, or at least if they're going to last for 2 minutes, you can walk away for 2 minutes and then come back, or whatever it is you want to do. But you're locked into, at least that you can't avoid them on the screen, so they know they can serve up these ads and charge for them. So that's become part of this life, is dealing with this. And I mean, I have an annual subscription to Disney Plus that expires in December, I think it is, or whatever. But after kind of a lackluster schedule and this last very wokey acolyte Star Wars thing, it's like, when that subscription comes up, it's gone. If they bring back another edition of the Mandalorian, I'll re-up, after they produce all the issues they're going to do there, the episodes, and stream it, binge it, and unsubscribe. And I'm going to do what a lot of people do, is basically hop on and hop off, get the content I want, pay for it, and it'll save me a lot of money. Not ready to give up my Netflix yet, or my Amazon. Amazon Prime is fine because I'm still, I order things from time to time and stuff like that, so it's going to stick with me. And I don't care if they throw a few ads in there or not. But I'm only watching streaming shows on the weekend while I watch news during the weekday, and whatnot. So yeah, we're in a different world. I think you're right. I mean, we are transitioning to a thing where people are now being self-select, what they really want. I mean, there was that sports venture that the courts have struck down for now with the venue, or however you want to pronounce it, where they're going to put ESPN and they're going to put all those sports packages together, which I think was fine. I mean, they're going to charge like $43 a month, but I'm sure people are out there willing to pay for a sports package, a sole sports package.
That's mainly what I watch on TV. So
yeah, so we'll see how this all turns out as well. So we've got, one of the other pieces of news here relating to campaign is, RFK Jr. suspended his campaign, has thrown his support to Donald Trump. Yeah. Okay. So,
yay.
Yes. To address that, John, it turned out that it was a setting on Brian's computer through the StreamYard program on Brian's side, and we just didn't know it. So I'm glad that you have confirmed that we have fixed the problem.
Excellent. It was
That
really
was
good.
such a headache. It has been the bane of my existence for like the last
Yeah,
month.
it's like, I knew I had a feeling something on this end because it worked on the other shows.
Yeah, because I have the same program. I hosted another program for a couple of weeks on another account. It's been perfectly fine. I tested it out just doing like a test of me audio only, and ran that back, and it was fine. And I'm like, man, what is going on here? And so, anyway, I'm glad we got that done. Anyway, so RFK Jr. has suspended his campaign, thrown his support to Trump. You like this? You think this is a big deal? I mean, or at least a bigger deal than I do. Uh, I'm still kind of on the fence. I mean, I know he's got some support. He doesn't have as much support as he did when Biden was running, but there is still some support. I'm still a little bit. I'm still trying to figure out how many of the Bobby, the Kennedy Jr. people will actually vote for Trump, you know, or how many people that were basically in his camp before everything changed were people who just they looked to him because they didn't like Biden nor Trump, but some of them have defected because they said, okay, Harris is worth giving a shot to. Now they may come back, they may swing back over once they hear Harris's message, and once she actually has to get hung up there on her policies because no one really she hasn't really said deep down what her policies are. So maybe it does swing it back, but the polls, I haven't really seen the polls swing back that much towards Trump yet. Maybe that we still need a little more time.
Okay, a few things there. So Bobby coming over, he was like 5 or 6% in the battleground states. All the battleground states, he had attracted either 5% of the vote or 6% of the vote. The polling shows that about 2/3 of those people will vote for Trump, and about half of the ones who won't vote for Trump won't vote. They won't vote for Kamala either, right? They'll just not vote, sit it out, leave it blank, whatever. So it's a pretty good lift for him vote wise, a percent or two, in these closed battleground states, which is an important thing, right? But a couple of things are going on there. First of all, a Kennedy endorsed a Republican. And you can say, oh, the rest of the Kennedys are upset and all this kind of stuff. But that's, for people of a certain age, that's an earth-shaking development, right? This is the epitome of Democrat Party. And one of them is saying, the scion of the family is saying, and really, the only one that's really ever amounted to anything since then, I guess you could say Townsend. She was lieutenant governor of Maryland and did nothing or whatever. But for the most part, they're all zeros since then, except for him, is saying my side is too crazy to vote for. My side has gone off the deep end, and they're for wrong things, and they don't care about Americans, and I got to go to the other party. Okay, that is not a small thing. They can argue that it is, but it's not. He brings with him, and I think Trump is okay with that. Right after Trump did this, he had this, right after this happened, he had this interview with this guy where they talked about substance abuse. Did you see this? I don't know who the guy was, but he's apparently pretty well known. And the guy, he had lost his brother to substance abuse, just as Trump had, and just as I did. And so it's a very personal issue to Trump, right? And he talked about it on a very personal level with the guy, and about like what's it, lapsing, and how do you, what do you do when you lapse, and I mean, all this stuff. Kennedy has a message, of he wants to go in and say like the stuff that's recommended in the food pyramid is horrible. That stuff is done, and like how they build school cafeteria meals and so forth is done with an eye toward pleasing constituents, not making people, strong and healthy. That a lot of our diet is really destructive, that we have a chronic disease problem that's like 8 times worse than any other country in the world. And that's a big driver of our deficits, is paying for people with chronic illnesses that are never going to get better. You just have to keep treating and treating. And, you know, what might we do to that? I mean, what are we doing that's causing it? Why is our problem 8 times worse than anybody's in the world? And, you know, how can we get out of it? Right. And so, you starting to see this, make America healthy again, MAHA, right? So, you know, this sort of takes the Trump campaign message, which is, you know, self-reliance. We're going to build this back up ourselves without big government programs. And it's attaching to it this, we're going to make ourselves healthy and strong again, right? We're going to quit giving in to the food lobby and to the big ag lobby and killing our citizens to keep them profitable. And, you know, that's not a line that Republicans have pushed in the past, but it's a line that has become relevant. You know, I think that most people understand that the country's sick in a lot of ways. It's ill, right? Half the jobs that Biden says he created, and now we don't know what got created, because, you know, they just lopped 818,000 jobs off the jobs created roll last week too, right? So, but the only places where there's job growth in America is healthcare and social services, right? So we're a sicker, sadder, more in need of help population than we've ever been because of leftist policies, right? And so now they want to make this argument, and it would not have been that credible coming from Trump, even though he doesn't drink, but it is credible coming from RFK. And in fact, RFK has already built somewhat of a following around this, right? So when he says, I've talked to Trump about this, and, you know, Trump is going to push for this, that means a lot to those people. Those people could very easily find themselves voting for Trump, right? They're not attached to the, you know, big Democrat machine, or they wouldn't have left Harris.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not totally dismissing, you know, RFK's potential effect on this. I mean, he goes from being an outright spoiler in the traditional sense of being on. I mean, he's staying on the ballot in some states because they can't take him off. And he wants to stay on the ballot in the kind of the non-competitive states, I guess, in essence. But on the other hand, I guess I've also seen a few things there too, which makes me wonder of some Democrats who've heard Harris up to now and are thinking like, okay, you know, I don't like Trump all that much, but I kind of like what Bobby Kennedy is saying. So maybe I can do this. You know, maybe I can actually cross over and vote because Kennedy's kind of on the team. You know, Kennedy's going to be part of the transition team. You know, so like that. So he may have an effect that way. You know, where the race is going to right now as it stands is going to be close, at least on the popular vote. And you know, I meant to go back and look and see where we are electorally to see, you know, where the real votes are. I mean, I think Governor Kemp said that, you know, or somebody said that, you know, Trump really needs to get Georgia in order to make sure that he wins the entire thing. So that's part of that too. It's like we still have some of these states, you know, that'll be going back and forth a little bit, but you know, the debate may swing it a little bit. But we also have, we're about a week away or thereabouts, or just before, you know, North Carolina, you know, starts sending out their ballots, and other states will follow soon thereafter. So we're gonna have a lot of voting done, you know, in the month of September and month of October, before you know, election day. I don't know how many votes out of all the ones that will be cast. I can't remember how many mail-in votes we had the last time around, but people are definitely getting comfortable with that, and you know, the states are making it very easy to go mail-in voting and whatnot. So you're going to have,
you're scoring at home, or even if you're alone.
Yeah, so you've got we'll have to see there, because that but I'm going to tend to say that a lot of the mail-in votes are going to be from the base. And not as the undecideds are still probably. I think the undecideds, the people independents, they're still going to want to wait and see a little bit more. They may mail in their ballot a little bit later in the game, still before they have to, but they may not mail it in until they've really seen what both sides have to offer, and we're still, I think we're still waiting for that a little bit, because they've been kind of trading tit for tat, but more so on the Harris side. That that's part of the thing with that CNN interview, is that are they going to talk about policy? How much are they going to try and nail her down on policy? It's like, fracking, the price gouging, the border wall, any of these things is fair game. And I think they ought to be talking about that, because she has clearly flip-flopped on issues that she needs to fix.
And she's copying him in every way she can, right? I mean, even down to like the thing about the no tax on tips, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everything that she can do to copy Trump, she's doing, even the bad ideas,
Right. Even the bad ideas with all of that, and then the border wall issue, where there's tweets out there saying how useless that was. She has derided that border wall, and now she's talking about how strong she was on the border. The fracking.
And she wants to build the wall. She's like, we need to build a wall.
I think isn't there an ad out there with her in front of the wall or something? It's like that's Trump's wall.
What are you talking about? But I mean, I think that Trump needs to make the point, though. You could, like we used to talk about, we can, or like, when, because we have Republican candidates who look like Democrats, right? And we say, why vote for Democrat light when you can vote for Democrat, right? Well, in this case, why vote for Trump light when you can have Trump? You can have the guy who actually thinks up the idea, rather than the woman who can't talk to the press and copies the idea,
Okay, so we're at the point where we ought to wrap it up. So take us out.
First of all, thanks for the ball game. Man, was that fun. That was a nice view down there.
Yeah, the results were not in your favor, but it was a great game.
Yeah, but we went back the next night, and it did work out our way.
Yeah, so, it changed. Yeah.
2 out of 4 against the Orioles is pretty good. Ted Cruz is never going to win by more than about 55 to 48, or something like that. He's never going to win the whole, You know what I mean? He's not that 53, 54. That's about all he can get. I'm not any more worried about him now than I was before. The Zuckerberg thing is huge, right? There's been a lot of reporting on this, but he's admitting that he was told by the government not to publish anything about the Hunter Biden laptop. And he followed the orders, right? So the government is, intimidating social media people into withholding information. Voters need to make their choices, right? That's what happened here. That was election interference. So whoever's responsible for that inside the Biden White House should lawyer up, because they will likely hear from prosecutors soon after Biden takes office. Tulsi Gabbard. RFK says there's a bunch of Democrats who are about to cross over and endorse Trump. I'm interested to see some people. I don't really count Tulsi Gabbard as one. You're going to have to produce a heck of a lot more than that to meet the thing on that. And, I think Jack Smith refiled this indictment. He included 2 of the 1512 crimes that the SCOTUS just explicitly said were not crimes. So he's not serious about this. This is just trying to drag Trump, election interference, and I think Trump will capitalize on it and probably improve his standing in the ratings.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed it. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you again next week.